There's those of us whom, even though we don't necessarily hate any group of people or exactly feel entitled to those people's time, their bodies, their affection, we are nonetheless celibate, and it's not out of choice.
Been so long since I've recorded a video, or I guess like 2 weeks. So recently I was watching a video from a YouTuber by the name of Kidology. She makes mostly philosophy videos, and she does interesting video essays on topics for her life. And this one I found really interesting, and it was this idea of being a single person who doesn't want to not have any type of romantic relationship or human intimacy. And she asked the question, am I an incel? And that word is very, very negative. Like, if you look at the dictionary version of incel, it's sort of interesting the word choice they use. So the dictionary version of incel is a member of an online community of young men who consider themselves unable to attract women sexually, typically associate views that are hostile towards women, and men who are sexually active. Single woman here doesn't sound like someone who is a angry young man who hates women or even men. I mean, even in fact, and the clip I showed you, she says she doesn't hate anyone. She's just someone who does want that human connection. And the reason why she is involuntary celibate or not having any type of sexual relationship is, well, a reason that's really specific for her. And I highly suggest checking out that video because I think many people would be able to relate to that. But not everyone who isn't in a romantic relationship or not everyone who's not having sex is someone who's just angry at the opposite sex or mad or bitter or whatever it is. It's people, for whatever reason, are unable to find the relationship they are looking for. So I asked a question, this title, are Christian incels? Well, with this definition of incel, I'm going to say no, they're not. But I do want to talk about people who would like to have sex or have sexual relationships or be in dating relationships, but for whatever reason, they can't. And I don't think this is clickbait. So before you be like, I came to have you bash on a group of people, no, that's not what I'm here to do. What I want to talk about is something that I think a lot of people in the church have experienced. And not just people in the church, but just like single people who the reason they're not having these intimate relationships because there's a barrier for them to be in a relationship, whether it's because they're dating and trying, or it's just not working, or whatever reason, they're in a place in their life where that type of human connection is missing.
I am celibate, and I have been celibate for years, but it isn't necessarily by choice. And I do feel very lonely about, oh my God, my voice is breaking. It's not because I'm going to cry. I just haven't drank anything all day. It sounds so somber. I'm celibate. If I could, I wouldn't be celibate.
Becoming more and more normal with people getting married later in life, or just in general, for whatever reason, it's harder to date in modern society. So you have a lot of single people, religious or not, who aren't having sex, aren't in relationships that are consistent, aren't experiencing this close intimacy that allows them to be in a relationship where they can express themselves in that way. And I think we as a society have failed single people on almost every level when it comes to that, whether it's in the church where you're told, hey, if you're not happy about being single, it's probably because you don't love Jesus enough. Or society as a whole, you can't really ever be, if you're not happy single, you'll never be happy in a relationship. When in fact, these broad statements are not super helpful and don't come into the complexity of who people are and the reasons why they may or may not be in a relationship. And I think that this needs a paradigm shift. If we want people to be seen as fully whole, then we shouldn't underplay people's pain of not being in a relationship. I did young adults ministry for a couple years, and one of the things that was such a struggle for people was that it was hard trying to keep this commitment of not entering into sexual relationships, but being with someone and not being able to participate in that, or dating and not participating in that, and missing that close intimacy where on stage your pastor is constantly telling you how great marriage is.
This world of a sex life or a non-existent sex life, when you are somebody who yearns for a connection with someone, but you just can't get there. Regrettably, the very negative connotations associated with being involuntarily celibate sort of creates, I guess, in a way, stigma.
Being single is like this, not being as is like a lower grade of Christian. And even if churches aren't saying that on stage directly, it is definitely something within Christian culture that is seen throughout our American church system. And not just in the American church, I mean, whether it's Disney movies or romance movies or anything and in between, romantic relationships are seen as the thing that is to be obtained and is probably the most important relationship in our Western American culture. And that can be very difficult for a lot of people, whether you're someone who is hesitant to be in relationships because you came out of a bad one with abuse and trauma. You will still want to crave that intimacy, but there can be a barrier for you. Or if you're someone who is, like I said, a single Christian who just wants to honor God, or if you're just a single person, non-religious, no real trauma, and you just can't find anyone to date at the moment, and everyone's just telling you, hey, you should just be fine, when in fact, not having text messages or not having phone calls or not having a life partner is an actual hard thing for a lot of people. Before I was a Christian, one of the things I thought was so interesting was that I realized I had more sex when I was in a relationship, more intimacy, that part of me that craved that was being satisfied, than when I was single, right? And I always thought, as like a young kid who watched a lot of rap videos and stuff like that and TV shows, I thought single people just had tons of sex. I mean, if anyone who's watched the show Jersey Shore, if you're as old as me, like that's what it looked like. And when you were a teenager coming up, you're like, man, that seems pretty cool. But then you get older and you realize actually being in a relationship or being married, you literally do have more sexual intimacy. And that's just, I mean, it just makes sense logistically, like going out and trying to find a person to do that with you randomly whenever you want and you don't have any real connection or ties is very difficult. And so you have all these people who just aren't able to have that type of intimacy. Go back to that word incel. Before it became a term for angry men on the internet who hate women, it was actually formed as a community for women and some men in Canada as a way for them to like relate to each other. And I just want to read this quote from the BBC when they actually interviewed the woman who started the very first quote unquote incel like chat forum, because I think it's very interesting and will lead to a point that I think will help a lot of people. In 1997, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no Tinder. Even MySpace was 6 years away. Elena, who doesn't want to use her full name, was in her mid-20s and had just started dating. It had taken me a long time. I was kind of a late bloomer. I thought maybe there are other late bloomers out there. I noticed people would talk about the lonely virgin and make silly jokes about people who didn't start dating in their teens, she said. She was just someone who was looking for comfort because she wanted to relate to other people. Because it's hard being completely alone or feeling like you're the only person out there. And as today, as we live in a country where people are getting married later, and we have the most single people like ever recorded, I guess, in history possibly, where we have this paradox of choice, where we have people moving constantly, where we have a lot of different market and economic forces, when we're a country that's less religious and all these things there. You have a lot of people who just aren't in relationships or getting married in their 40s, and it can be really hard for people to deal with. So what are some things we can do? Well, first off, for my Christians, I think what we should stop doing is something like this. Guys, it's me. Welcome to the Christian Men podcast here where we do Christian men things and we talk about the Bible. My name is Christian Man, and I am going to tell you guys about my testimony, how I struggled as a single man to now someone who is married. It's been 3 weeks and it's been the most amazing time in my life in your singleness. And I can understand. I was single for 2 years. I was 17 years old. I just was broken up from my cheerleader girlfriend, and she broke up with me at prom, and I struggled. I said, God, since I was 2 months old, I knew I wanted to be a husband. I felt it. I felt God called me to that. And because of that, I thought, could I ever survive? And you know what I did, guys? I focused on God more than anything. I did short-term mission trips to Cancun. Or vacation, whatever you want to say. But I did it. And I did it. And then I met my wife in that mission trip. She was wearing a very hot bikini. I mean, she was in church. And I saw her and I said, man, God is telling me she's the one. And look, maybe many of you are been waiting 5 months or 6 months. But if you just believe that God wants to fulfill the desires of your heart, then you will be married too. So yeah, 2 years was a long time, and now I'm 19-year-old and married, and we're having our first kid, and we've only been married 3 days. Okay, that was a little bit of an exaggeration, of course, but I've seen something very similar of those stories in Christian dating media and many evangelical circles. And I don't want to just really I'm not trying to make fun of people who have maybe a story like that. But my point is that some people are waiting a lot longer and not getting married at 19, 20, 21, 22, been in the church their whole life or newly converts. I think we should just let people be able to lament and just, love them through that and not try to offer things like one Bible verse taken out of context or, not being supportive or just acknowledging that, yeah, you've been married 10 years, but when someone's in their 30s or 40s and they're still single, that can be very hard. Another way we can help in the church is that we can, make sure that people who are married or, have families, start inviting single people in your home. Let them be with you. If you're married, don't just exclude yourself off. I've noticed this with a lot of Christian couples, like a Christian couple get married and for some reason they just love doing couple dates and couple things and couple game nights, and that's fine. But for some reason, I don't know about non-Christian circles, but this is really a thing where they'll do all types of stuff together as couples and just exclude their single friends. And I think that's not the way to go. I really think what you need to do is be intentional about how you are welcoming people in your home, and are you being people who have radical generosity and radical hospitality. Because that is a way to love and honor people. And that way people don't feel excluded, because most single ministries are for people in their early 20s, which is a whole nother problem there. But we should be able to incorporate people in small groups, Bible studies, but not just even church events. Just, hey, I know I got the kids in Beacon Loud, but you can just come over and watch a movie with us. And I think a lot of people would really enjoy that and be willing to participate, and we wouldn't have to have this sort of weird division in the church. Is it okay to be upset about being lonely at times or being frustrated? Yeah, it is. And I'm not going to tell you it's not hard or not difficult or not frustrating. And that's okay. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. And I don't know how many people watch this video, but if you're a single person or was single, tell me about your experience has been in this society and the frustrations that you felt, or how people have made you feel welcomed in your singleness or whatever it is, And guys, what do I do on this channel? Well, I talk about everything: politics, relationships, religion, theology. I do Bible studies. I talk about media. I do movie reviews. And I do all these things from mostly, for the most part, right, a Christian perspective. And sometimes I whip out the Bible. And sometimes I just give my opinion, like I did just now, more of a critique on the American church and American society on relationships. Anyway, it's time for me to edit this video now. I'll see you guys later. Another video coming soon.